Mr. Stephen Main.
Good morning, Chairman. Just an initial question on the political environment that we're facing, as well as some of our practices at our venues. I think it's fair to say that the political environment is hostile and getting more hostile. We've obviously seen John Brumby quite outrageously tear up our contract, invoking sovereign risk arguments in not paying our compensation that was written into the legislation. I've heard people make the argument in defence of that, well, what's Tabcorp ever done for the state? Why should we have any sympathy at all for Tabcorp given the way that it operates and given the amount of money that it has made, is one of the arguments that Labor Party types put up when you have a go at them for the sovereign risk question. Obviously, we've now got a Prime Minister who has publicly declared that he hates poker machines, and we've also got a no pokies independent who's running, Nick Xenophon, who's obviously running very aggressively to try and shut down our industry. Now, if you also look at issues such as the fact there's now $17 trillion worth of investment funds globally signed up behind the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment, and you look at the context in Australia where we are the world's biggest gamblers per capita, there's a lot of people saying that it's an example of corporate greed and excess, the way that big Australian corporates such as Tabcorp have milked pokey addicts to maximise their profits. So when you look at all of this, you see a very hostile environment. And I want to raise 4 issues with you where I think we need to get ahead of the curve, where we need to improve our practices so we can show this to the regulators and defend our franchises. Because at the moment I think our franchises are being imperilled in part by the way that we are practising at our venues. The first one is this whole luring of kids into our venues, the whole free food playgrounds that aren't effectively supervised. I mean, a glass wall does not constitute supervision, children-oriented entertainment, coin-operated games of chance, things like that that are designed to lure children into our venues. I think we need to exclude children from our venues. I think we need to get ahead of the curve and make this a practice. No more children in our pokies venue. Point taken. That's it. We're ahead of the curve. The next one is the whole deceptive signs issue. In paragraph 2.2 of our code, we talk about, quote, providing information on our gambling products and services so you are able to make informed decisions about your gambling practices. The reality is most of the signage around our venues are how you can win. They are not offering an informed decision, information about gambling practices. Self-exclusion. We don't offer any visible signs on self-exclusion. Addicts don't like to own up to their problems. It's not good enough for the addict to just go to the staff member and say, I've got a problem. You need to make those self-exclusion signs prominent so you can hold yourselves up as a more responsible operator. And finally, ATM visibility. The Woolworths Bruce Matheson joint venture are the worst in this regard. I can give you a whole bunch of venues with our machines that have been identified by the pokywatch.org website where the ATMs are clearly visible from the pokies venues. I don't know if the board's ever been out to the Excelsior Hotel, the Moorland Hotel, the New Hotel, the Batman Hill Collins, the Century City Tavern. All of them are in clear breach of 5.6 of our code because all of those venues and these websites have been to them, they've taken the photos, the ATMs are clearly visible from the pokies venues. Woolworths has been written to fix it, they've done nothing. It's time for this board to roll their sleeves up, get out to the venues and take decisive action to improve our practices so we won't have our licences taken away from us, so we won't have institutional funds from around the world deciding that we are in breach of the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment. The political environment is hostile. Will you commit to getting ahead of the curve and addressing these 4 specific issues in our venues such that we won't have a bigger regulatory backlash than we are already facing?
Look, thanks for those comments, Mr Main, and I think you raise very legitimate concerns. And as I spend some time in my address talking about the issues with responsible gambling and the stance and the leadership which I believe Tabcorp has taken in the past and is taking today. It is absolutely essential that we not only proclaim the principles of responsible gambling, but we demonstrably are out there in the marketplace adhering to those principles. I think they're good points that Mr. Mayne raises. I would like to think that we are complying with those objectives. They do form part of our code of responsible gambling. But I think, Elmer, would you like to respond to the specific issues that have been raised, which I think really do go to the management?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, firstly, I think one of the things that we are particularly proud of is our leadership position when it comes to responsible gambling globally. And the Chairman showed a slide that we were again named world leader in responsible gambling by the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. That doesn't mean that you don't raise very valid points, but I think what it does mean that as a public company, we are putting ourselves and through you under constant scrutiny to make sure that we do the best we can in all of these areas. And in some ways it's sad that that scrutiny will go in 2012 when we go to a venue model. On the specifics, when it comes to kids in venues, it's very clear that children are not allowed on any gaming floor. Certainly when where we run our casinos, we have very, very strict regulations around that to which we adhere. We don't run the pokey venues ourselves. They are part of our venue partnerships. We do lead with our responsible gaming code. The code that we have is tighter than the one that the government has originally required, and we continuously push our venue partners to comply with that code in advance, recognizing that if the industry doesn't manage itself, the government will do it for us. So on kids in venues, it's hard to disagree with your basic point. On deceptive signs, the signage in Victoria in particular is probably amongst the best in Australia. That doesn't mean it can't be better, but again, our signage is ahead of the minimum requirements and something that will continue to be tightened. Customers can, of course, get information on the win rates on every single gaming machine at the game itself, which is a requirement that came in many years ago. Self-exclusion is a process that can be improved. We have self-exclusion programs in place. We have been experimenting certainly by trying to make sure that people who do self-exclude themselves don't relapse, so that people truly improve their lives. And for example, we've been experimenting with having social services included in the initial interview to make sure that people stay in touch with the self-excluded patron. And we note some suggestions from Clubs Australia yesterday to improve self-exclusion practices, which we haven't studied in detail, but it's another sign that the industry itself is trying to advance this, recognizing that there is a big prize to be had here in terms of the support for our people. ATM visibility. ATMs have been available in venues for a very long time. They're quite essential to the venue itself because it's not just about gaming, it's also about parking, it's about food, and it's about the general entertainment, having a drink and so forth. And so a lot of hotels and clubs are, of course, cash-based today. We've expressed concern to the government when it decided to remove ATMs from Victorian venues because we think that will hurt the venue more than it will assist problem gamblers. Having said that, there are clear guidelines on the visibility of ATMs, and we think all venues should adhere to those. Of course, you would all be well aware that in Victoria, from 2010, just looking at my colleague here, from 2010, ATMs will be completely banned from all gaming venues. And so in that sense, you will get your way, because if they're not there, they can't be visible. And so that will happen from 2010. So that's on the specifics, Chairman.
Thanks, Elmer. Next question.